Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Nutrition and Life podcast. My name is Lisa, I'm your host, and today I have something special for you. May was Menopause Month here at Nutrition and Life, and to round it off, I'm giving you a summary from last year's guests that specialized in this topic. Before I get started, though, if you enjoy the show, please subscribe and give us a rating. It is the best way to help me grow. Now, without further ado, let's get into it. As many of you know, I'm passionate about helping women optimize their health through evidence-based nutrition and lifestyle changes. And when it comes to menopause or the menopause transition, there is a lot of conflicted information out there, and I know that can and must feel overwhelming. Over the past year, I've had the privilege of interviewing some of the leading experts in this field, from Dr. Lara Bryden to Jason Theobald, Dane Anderson, Louise Digby, and many more. Today, I want to share with you the most valuable insights I've gathered from these conversations, which are backed by research, just to help you navigate this really crazy time of life with confidence. So whether you're in your 30s and want to prepare and currently experiencing perimenopausal symptoms, or you're fully in menopause, this video or podcast will provide practical strategies that you can implement right away. We'll cover everything from understanding the hormonal changes to specific nutrition, exercise, and lifestyle recommendations that can make the transition smoother. What's fascinating is that perimenopause has been getting much more attention recently. As Dr. Lara Bryden mentioned in our interview, just a few years ago when she wrote her book, Hormone Repair Manual, most people hadn't even heard of perimenopause. Now it's becoming much more widely discussed, which is wonderful because knowledge is power, or is potential power. We just need to apply it when it comes to navigating this transition. So let's understand the transition. And I want to clarify what's actually happening during this transition. So as Dr. Lara Bryden explained so beautifully, perimenopause is like puberty in reverse. During first puberty, estrogen kicks in, followed by progesterone. In perimenopause, it's the opposite. Progesterone leaves first, typically in our 40s. And this is what defines the onset of perimenopause. Then estrogen doesn't just gradually decline, as many believe, it actually fluctuates dramatically, sometimes spiking up to 3 times higher than normal before and eventually decreasing. So this hormonal roller coaster explains why symptoms can be so chaotic and unpredictable. One month you might feel fine, and then the next you're experiencing hot flashes, mood swings, and unexpected weight gain. Many women describe this as feeling like they're on an emotional and physical roller coaster, never quite knowing what the day will bring. The timing of perimenopause is largely genetic. So some women start experimenting with symptoms, or experiencing symptoms in their late 30s, and others might not notice changes until their late 40s. So on average, perimenopause lasts about 4 to 8 years before reaching menopause, which is officially diagnosed after 12 consecutive months without a period. It's important to understand that this isn't a linear process. You might have months where you feel completely normal, followed by months of intense symptoms. So this unpredictability is part of what makes perimenopause so challenging for women. And Jason Theobald explained in our interview that menopause itself, while not classified as an autoimmune condition, acts very similar to one. So the body experiences significant inflammation as hormone levels decline, which can exacerbate symptoms and make weight management particularly challenging during this time. So now let's talk about some of the common symptoms and why they actually happen. The symptoms that women, or many women, experience during this transition aren't just random. They're directly connected to the hormonal shifts, and I want to break them down, or at least the most common ones for you. So the first one being weight gain, especially around the midsection. Jason Theobald explained that the loss of estrogen affects fat distribution, shifting it from the hips and thighs to the belly. This isn't just a cosmetic concern. Visceral fat, the fat around your organ or organs, increases inflammation and can absolutely impact metabolic health. So this redistribution happens even if you maintain the same diet and exercise routine you've always had. Another symptom is sleep disturbances. The decline in progesterone, our calming hormone, can make it difficult to fall asleep and to stay asleep. And as Aram Grigorian pointed out, poor sleep then creates a cascade of other issues. So increased stress, poor food choices, and reduced recovery from your training. And many women find themselves waking up at like 3, 4 a.m., being unable to fall back asleep, which can be incredibly frustrating. Another symptom, which we often hear about, is hot flashes or just night sweats as well. These temperature regulation issues are connected to the hypothalamus, which is sensitive to estrogen fluctuations. So hot flashes can range from mild warmth to intense heat that'll wake you up from sleep basically drenched in sweat. And some women experience these occasionally, while others might have several episodes per day, actually. Um, Another common symptom is just mood changes. Estrogen and progesterone influence neurotransmitters like serotonin and GABA, which affect mood. And so this explains the increased anxiety, irritability, or even depression that some women experience, or just simply not feeling like yourself. You might find yourself reacting to situations in ways that feel out of character, or it can come out of nowhere, essentially. Another one is brain fog and memory issues. Research shows that estrogen plays a role in cognitive function. And as Lisa McCone's research demonstrated, there's temporary decline in cognitive abilities during the transition, which can be frightening, but it's just part of the brain's rewiring process, basically. So many women report getting words, losing their train of thought, or just having trouble concentrating. Symptom number 6 will be muscle loss and joint pain. So estrogen helps maintain muscle mass and joint health. Its decline can exacerbate sarcopenia, which is age-related muscle loss, and increase inflammation in joints. That is why many women notice that they feel weaker or experience more aches and pains during the transition. Another symptom is vaginal dryness and changes in sexual function or libido overall. So declining estrogen leads to less lubrication and thinning of vaginal tissues, which can make intercourse uncomfortable or even painful. This is a symptom that really typically doesn't improve without intervention, whether through topical treatments or hormone therapy, unfortunately. Another common symptom would be heart palpitations. So many women experience a racing or pounding heartbeat, which can be alarming, but is often related to hormonal fluctuations rather than, or mostly related to hormonal fluctuations rather than actual heart problems. I would still recommend getting that checked by the doctor, but yeah, it can be a common perimenopausal symptom. And then, of course, we're also experiencing digestive changes. So hormonal fluctuations can affect your gut motility and the microbiome, leading to bloating, constipation, or other digestive issues that weren't present before. And now symptom number 10 would be skin and hair changes, because lower estrogen levels can lead to drier skin, more wrinkles, and changes in hair texture or thickness. So many women notice that their hair is becoming thicker and that their skin doesn't recover from damage as quickly. Now, let's just make sure that we're understanding that these symptoms have a physiological basis, and that in of itself can be really validating, because often we're told like, oh, it's just in your head, you're imagining things, but no, you're not imagining things. You're not alone in this experience. The changes are happening because your body is going through a significant hormonal transition. I want to focus on metabolism and weight management now. One of the most frustrating aspects of perimenopause for many women is the change in metabolism and suddenly having difficulty losing weight or even gaining weight, or just having a body fat redistribution issue. So let's just address this head on. The research from the SWAN study, which followed women through the menopausal transition, showed that there is indeed a metabolic shift during this time. But it's not just about calories, it's about hormonal changes affecting where fat is stored and how efficiently your body burns it. So during perimenopause, women tend to lose muscle mass more rapidly, experience increased insulin resistance, have higher levels of inflammation, and see a shift in fat distribution to the abdominal area. All of that sounds horrible. I hear you. By now, you probably want to pull your hair out. Please don't do that. Louise Digby emphasized that while your metabolism does change, it doesn't mean that weight management is impossible. It just requires a different approach than that worked in your 20s and 30s. So this one study, which I discussed in a previous episode, found that during the menopausal transition, women experienced an accelerated increase in fat mass and an accelerated decrease in lean mass starting about 2 years or so before their final menstrual period. This continued until about 1.5 years after menopause, when the rate of these changes began to slow down finally. So this research confirms that what many women experience, so even without changing anything, not the exercise nor the diet, nothing, their body composition shifts during this transition. Understanding this can, again, help you approach your weight management with more realistic expectations and even strategies. So some of the strategies for weight management during this transition would be to really prioritize protein. I know we talk about this a lot anyway, but you might even want to bump it up to like 1.2 grams per pound of body weight or so. Every expert I've interviewed agrees, really protein becomes even more crucial during perimenopause and menopause. Generally speaking, we aim for 1.6 to 2.2 grams per kilogram of body weight. So that equates to, let's say, 0.7 to 1 grams per pound, but you could even bump it up to 1.2 grams per pound if you wanted to err on the side of caution. And as Aram Gregorian suggested, a good rule of thumb is to aim for about 30 to 40 grams of protein per meal, 3 to 5 times per day. So that will help you preserve muscle mass, increase satiety, stabilize your blood sugar, support hormone production. And a practical tip along with that would be to start your day with a protein-focused breakfast rather than a carb-heavy option. That just sets the tone for better blood sugar management as well. So what could that look like in practice? Instead of having a breakfast of just toast and jam or cereal, go for something like an egg white omelet with vegetables and a slice of sourdough, or low-fat Greek yogurt with berries and nuts, or a protein smoothie with added collagen protein powder. And for something like your lunch and dinner, aim to have at least a palm-sized portion of lean protein as the foundation of your meal. Jason Theobald also mentioned that many women that he works with are actually consuming too much protein. That would be more women that come from like the physique space. So we don't want to overdo it. At least like if it's relative or not relative to your activity level and muscle mass. So he actually recommends focusing also on the quality of the protein sources while ensuring you're not over consuming. So yeah, I wouldn't necessarily recommend more than 1.2 grams per pound of body weight. That could just put additional stress on the body during the sensitive time. So the next point to focus on after prioritizing protein would be to balance your macronutrients wisely. While some experts do promote very low carb approaches for menopausal women, Dane Anderson cautioned against extremes. So he explained that while reducing refined carbs is beneficial and eliminating like things like sugars or very processed carbs, like in white bread or something, eliminating carbs completely could negatively impact thyroid function, which is already vulnerable during this transition. So instead, we want to focus on moderate amount of protein, as mentioned earlier, complex carbohydrates, mostly from vegetables, fruit, and whole grains or starchy vegetables, healthy fats like olive oil, avocado, fatty fish, and fiber-rich foods to support the gut health and hormone elimination. Jason Theobald recommends something like a Mediterranean style eating pattern during this transition, which research does show can help reduce the inflammation and support your metabolic health. Dane Anderson also explained that metabolic flexibility, so your body's ability to switch between burning carbs and fats for fuel, becomes particularly important during perimenopause. Many women become kind of quote unquote stuck in a sugar burning mode, making it difficult to access stored body fat for energy. So supporting metabolic flexibility through balanced nutrition and not having any one macronutrient way too low or way too high could really help us address this particular issue. The point number 3, after protein and balancing your macros, would be to time your meals strategically for what works for you. I know that intermittent fasting is super popular, but it does require extra caution during perimenopause. Again, Dane Anderson explained to us that women in this phase often have higher cortisol, so stress levels, and extended fasting could just exacerbate this stress response. He said, so if you do really want to try fasting, mostly to keep your calories in check, he would start gradually, to start with a 12-hour overnight fast, and just to ensure that your eating window includes appropriate protein and like macro or micros in general, making sure you're also working or fueling your workouts really well, and just continue to monitor how you feel. So if you experience increased anxiety, fatigue, or sleep disturbances, fasting really might not be for you. For many women, having 3 to 4 regular meals with minimal snacking in between works better than extended fasting periods. Dane Anderson, also emphasized that fasting should be introduced very gradually for perimenopausal women in particular. So that would just help us prevent the stress response too quickly or put your body in sort of like a fight or flight mode. So now let's move on to the 4th point, which is we want to focus on stabilizing your blood sugar levels. Louise Digby was really big on this in our interview. She highlighted the importance of blood sugar management during perimenopause, and just said that insulin resistance tends to increase during this transition, making blood sugar stability even more crucial. Her practical guidelines were to pair carbs with protein and healthy fat, so never have quote unquote naked carbs, not even just fruit on its own, to avoid long periods without food, to our previously mentioned point, to include fiber with every meal, to go for short walks after meals, and considering supplements like myo-inositol or even berberine, chromium, or ALA, which is alpha lipoic acid, just if appropriate. Obviously, that would be good to discuss with your coach or some other healthcare provider. Although, as we know, doctors don't necessarily have the best knowledge when it comes to nutrition, so probably better to discuss this with a nutrition coach or RD. Blood sugar levels, or keeping our blood sugar levels steady, helps us reduce cravings, improve energy, and support hormone balance, which are all critical factors during this menopause transition. The 5th strategy is to address emotional eating. It doesn't sound like that's directly related to the perimenopause transition, but it is. Many women find that emotional eating becomes more challenging during perimenopause, given the mood swings and so on. Fluctuating hormones can intensify cravings and reduce impulse control, making it even harder to stick to nutritional goals. So Louise Digby also recommends here that we want to identify our emotional eating triggers. We want to create alternative coping strategies for stress, boredom, and other emotions. And we just really want to practice mindful eating. And I personally am so big on mindful eating. Like, I really have something against eating on the go, or even just with ton of distractions, like scrolling through your phone, typing up an email in the meantime. Your body is literally not in a rest and digest state. If you're doing that, it's still in work mode. So how do you expect it to rest and digest? It doesn't make sense. If you take anything away from this podcast, I would love for you to eat more mindfully, to just It doesn't have to be in complete boredom. Maybe you can listen to a podcast meanwhile, but give your body actually the chance to take up the texture of the food that you're eating, the smell, the just every sensation that's associated with the food in front of you. Louise further recommends that we want to be compassionate with ourselves when we do overeat and that we focus on the next positive choice rather than dwelling on what might not have gone according to plan. So we want to remember that perfect eating really doesn't exist, and we want to build a healthy relationship with food that is just as important as the nutritional content of what we eat. Um, I guess another exercise or another point here alongside of the previous recommendations with protein, macronutrients, and so on is that we really want to acknowledge the importance of exercise for hormonal balance during this transition. The research is super clear that exercise is one of the most powerful tools for managing perimenopause symptoms. The type and intensity and frequency does matter a lot. So we're going to look closer into this. The study that we want to review here, or I'm looking into here, reviewed muscle building in perimenopausal versus postmenopausal women. And it showed that while it becomes more challenging to build muscle after menopause, yes, it's absolutely still possible with the right approach. So here's what the experts that I interviewed recommend. We want to prioritize strength training. Yes, for all these you cardio bunnies out there, cardio can be a lot of fun, is great for mental health, is great for cardiovascular health. But Jason Theobald emphasized that resistance training becomes a non-negotiable during perimenopause. We want to aim for 2 to 3 full body strength sessions per week with focusing on compound movements, so squats, deadlifts, presses, rows, a progressive overload, meaning gradually increasing weight or reps, and good form and controlling the tempo. So the research here shows that both moderate and lighter loads can be effective, but we also want to push ourselves to get stronger, which is also helpful, in terms of injury prevention as we age and also for fighting sarcopenia. The key really is consistency and progression. So anywhere for your exercises, anywhere between, let's say, 5 to 25 reps for a certain lift is a decent range. Important being that we finish a set close to failure, not necessarily to failure, but very close to it, where you feel like you really could not have done just another rep or two. Strength training is particularly important because it does help us maintain the muscle mass, which naturally declines during the transition, as we already said. More muscle mass means a higher metabolic rate, better insulin sensitivity, and an improved functional strength for daily activities. We don't want to be afraid to lift heavy weights. The study that we reviewed here or together showed that women can respond really well to, again, lighter loads and higher rep ranges and heavier loads and lower rep ranges, but the importance is it is important how close to failure we push ourselves. Next point when it comes to exercise overall, we want to balance high and low intensity. Louise Digby pointed out that many women double down on cardio when they notice weight gain, but this can backfire by increasing cortisol and inflammation. Instead, we want to aim for the strength training that we talked about. You could, if you really wanted to include cardio, or if you do want to include cardio, we want to do something more like really short HIIT sessions and maybe one low intensity cardio session if you enjoy running or something like that. But really always making sure we're getting our 8 to 10,000 steps daily, and maybe also including other activities like yoga or swimming or just whatever you enjoy. But really, strength training should build the base. A balanced approach supports metabolic flexibility, again, the ability to switch between burning carbs and fats for fuel. So Dane Anderson also explained that during periods of higher stress or more intense perimenopausal symptoms, it might be beneficial to reduce your high intensity exercise and focus more or almost exclusively on walking and yoga. So cutting out the HIIT training or the super strenuous strength training session. So maybe switching from a back squat to things more like a leg press or leg extensions, just to help us lower the overall cortisol load. Now, the third point when it comes to exercise was to prioritize recovery. Aram Gregorian emphasized that recovery becomes even more important during perimenopause. So kind of adding on to the previous point here, the body simply doesn't bounce back as quickly as it once did. And we want to include at least 1 to 2 full rest days per week, regular mobility work, and adequate sleep. If possible, again, we know that we might wake up here and there, but at least sleep opportunity of 7 to 9 hours per night. And we really, really want to focus on stress management practices also. Remember, exercise can be a stressor in and of itself on the body, or is a stressor on the body, but when we do it appropriately, it creates positive adaptations. But excessive exercise without recovery is probably going to worsen the hormonal imbalances. So Jason Theobald recommends periodizing, training throughout the year with phases of more intense training, phases of more recovery phases, maybe when you're going on vacation anyway, and a focus on rebuilding and rejuvenating. So having a periodized approach helps us prevent burnout from exercise and supports just long-term progress, really. The fourth point as it pertains to exercise is to listen to our body. This might be the most important exercise advice for perimenopausal women or just anybody really, because we're so out of tune with our body. We don't listen to our energy levels anymore. We try to fight back and just treat our body like a machine. And unfortunately, fortunately, it really isn't. We want to be in synergy with our body as opposed to fighting against it. Energy levels and recovery capacity are probably going to fluctuate during this time. So on days when you feel energetic and strong, push yourself harder in your workouts. And on days when you feel kind of depleted or your symptoms are higher, scale back a bit more. Don't use it as a full excuse to just like do absolutely nothing. Still get moving. Sometimes we just need to get moving and then the motivation, quote unquote, actually sets in. But yeah, try to listen to your body more. It doesn't mean giving up on your aesthetic or fitness goals. It just means adapting our approach to work with the body. Once again, I kind of like to use the analogy or metaphor of we want to be surfing with the wave. So the wave being life, really, right? You don't want to fight it, because if you fight it, you're just going to fall over. The water is stronger than you are. You're still sort of in the driver's seat, but you need to ride it. You can decide if you want to do a left turn or right turn, if you just want to go straight, whatever you want to do. But you need to ride the wave. And over time, having a mindful approach is going to lead to better results than pushing through, regardless of how you feel. Next point, we really want to manage our stress and sleep as best as we can during this transition. So we've kind of like finished off with the exercise component. Now we're going to look at managing stress and sleep. Every expert that I've spoken to has emphasized that stress management and sleep become absolutely critical during the menopause transition. And here is why. When you're stressed and your body produces more cortisol, when you're stressed, your body produces more cortisol, and that stress hormone will compete for resources with your sex hormones, with, just everything in your body, and it can make the perimenopause symptoms worse. Additionally, high cortisol levels do promote fat storage, particularly around the midsection, because if we're stressed, our body just wants to hold on to that little safety cushion there to prevent us or to ensure survival, essentially. Dr. Lara Bryden explained that the brain goes through a rewiring process during perimenopause, and the process is really highly sensitive to stress and sleep disruptions. So some of the most effective strategies that she mentioned was to prioritize sleep hygiene. We want to maintain consistent sleep and wake times, even on weekends, or at least as best as possible. We want to limit blue light exposure, and especially the 1 to 2 hours before bed. Jason Theobald actually recommends to use blue light blocking glasses if you do want to use your cell phone or something like that. But ideally, we just want to dim the lights, not use a lot of screens, and so on. We want to keep our bedroom cool, around about 65 to 68 degrees Fahrenheit or 18 to 20 degrees Celsius. You might want to consider taking a magnesium glycinate or a threonate before bed to help with sleep also. We want to create a relaxing bedtime routine that could include meditation or reading something. Yeah, just anything like that, a little bit of breathing practices. And we really want to avoid alcohol within 3 hours of bedtime, as that disrupts our sleep quality. Yes, you might feel like you can drift off to sleep more easily, but it's definitely going to disrupt your sleep quality. Keeping your bedroom dark and quiet is also very important. You could also use a sleep mask or earplugs if you need it. And we want to avoid caffeine in the afternoon, particularly as perimenopausal women become even more sensitive to the effects of caffeine. You could consider tracking your sleep with a wearable device to identify patterns and improvements. I have had an Aura for a while before. I have stopped using it a couple of years ago. I just didn't want to overwhelm myself with too much data, but I thought it was very helpful for a certain period of time. Jason Theobald also emphasized that sleep is when much of our recovery and hormone regulation happens. He did recommend that we treat sleep as an absolute non-negotiable priority rather than something that can be sacrificed when life gets busy. Now, on to stress management. Here are some recommendations what we could do to work on our stress management. We could incorporate breathing techniques or breathing practices or meditation or like anything that works for you. And don't say nothing works for me. I hate all of this relaxing crap. Please give it a go. Give it a go, not just once or twice, but maybe for a week, and then find the sort of treatment or a therapy that works for you. It could even just be 3 minutes or 1 minute. Anything is better than nothing, but sometimes it takes us a little while to actually allow our mind and body to relax and like ease into it or fully let go. The more important part is consistency, though, as opposed to duration. Another very, very effective stress management technique is to spend time in nature. The research really shows it can lower our cortisol levels, especially if we have like nature sounds and trees and like a nice view. Everybody likes that. We also want to make sure we're setting boundaries around work, technology, and even family sometimes, or just anyone who gets access to us. We could also consider taking adaptogens like ashwagandha, which help with stress management. We could schedule a regular quote unquote worry time to process our concerns. So like maybe as you've finished off the workday, but you have not, gone home to your family, or you haven't started your relaxation process yet in that transition, you could just journal for like 5 to 10 minutes of that day to sort of brain dump what's on your mind, what you feel like went well over the course of the day, what you wish would have gone better, what stresses you out, what you're feeling anxious about. Sometimes just bringing something to paper really helps us let go of that as well. We want to practice gratitude. Ideally, we also want to write that down. And ideally, I would say it's best done first thing in the morning, last thing of the day, or one or the other, because it helps us so much prime our mind for either a great sleep or for just a positive day. If we're training ourselves to look for the positive, we're just going to be in a much more positive state. So, yes. And then the last point being to reduce the consumption of like news or just anything that stresses you out. So maybe auditing your social media, thinking about, is it really the best thing to listen to the news or listen to the radio on my drive to work or first thing in the morning, and just being real with what's serving you and what isn't. Dr. Lara Bryden explained that stress management isn't just a nice to have during perimenopause, it's essential for hormone balance. Even small daily practices can have a cumulative, that's a hard word, cumulative positive effect on your stress response system. So moving on to the next point after sleep and stress management, we want to support our nervous system. Dane Anderson emphasized the importance of parasympathetic activities during perimenopause. So again, meditation, breathing, and so on, but also things like gentle yoga or Tai Chi, again, walking in nature without technology, having creative hobbies like painting, gardening, cooking, fostering your social connections without digital devices, restorative practices like massage, acupuncture, floating, again, breath work, all things like this. He just explained to us that many perimenopausal women are stuck in a sympathetic fight or flight dominant state, which exacerbates hormone imbalances and inflammation. Regularly engaging in parasympathetic activities helps us reset this balance and creates a more favorable internal environment for hormone regulation. We also want to make sure we're addressing underlying anxiety. Many women experience increased anxiety during perimenopause, which can be both a symptom of hormonal changes and a contributor to other symptoms. Louise Digby recommends we want to work with a therapist if that is the case, someone who understands hormonal transitions. We could also explore cognitive behavioral techniques for managing anxious thoughts. We could consider supplements like GABA, L-theanine, or CBD where appropriate and legal. We could also practice grounding techniques when anxiety spikes. We could be could be even more mindful with caffeine and alcohol consumption. And just remember that increased anxiety during this time is not a character flaw or weakness. It's a common experience related to changing brain chemistry and hormones. Now, let's shift a little bit more into addressing the inflammation aspect and just in general, quote unquote, detoxification. An aspect of perimenopause that doesn't get enough attention is the increased inflammation many women experience. Dane Anderson and Jason Theobald both emphasized how crucial it is to address this underlying inflammation. We want to make sure we're supporting our liver first and foremost. The liver is responsible for processing and eliminating used hormones. If this process is inefficient, hormones can recirculate and cause further imbalances. So foods, for example, that support detoxification would include cruciferous vegetables, so broccoli, cauliflower, Brussels sprouts, ground flax seeds, maybe like 1 to 2 teaspoons per day, dark leafy greens, beets, garlic and onions, turmeric and ginger, berries, and citrus fruit. Jason Theobald recommends what he calls quote unquote flush protocol for women with significant inflammation, which he refers to as a 14-day period of anti-inflammatory eating foods on kind of like a meal plan. And he combines that with reduced exercise intensity and increased sleep. So it's kind of like a reset. I'm normally not a big fan of meal plans or elimination diets, but I do think in certain cases it can really help us just eliminate those maybe excess estrogen or whatever it might be for a particular period of time. And then slowly reintroducing a little bit more of a wider approach and moving away from the meal plan again. The next point after supporting our liver would be to reduce our toxic load. Louise Digby explained how environmental toxin can mimic hormones and disrupt our endocrine system. Some of her practical recommendations were to switch to glass food storage containers instead of plastic, to choose organic for the Dirty Dozen produce items. So the Dirty Dozen is the 12 foods that the Environmental Working Group decides every year or detects every year in terms of produce, which is most heavily laden with pesticides. And so if you look at this list, for example, spinach, strawberries tend to be on there and many other things, well, obviously 10 other things. And so if you just focus on purchasing these foods, organic, and the others not necessarily, you can still really reduce your toxic load. Another strategy would be to use cleaning and personal care products, which are organic, to filter your water, to reduce your alcohol consumption. I am so big on this. I know you guys who have listened to this podcast before know that. To avoid synthetic fragrances and just to be mindful of air quality in your house as well, making sure you're getting your filters cleaned regularly, all this good stuff. Louise Digby also emphasized that it doesn't need to be an all or nothing approach, right? You can start with just small changes, like let's say your shampoo runs out and you get a new one, which is organic, or your cleaning products run out and you get a new one, which is organic, or something like that. Even small reductions in toxic exposure can have meaningful benefits for hormone balance over time. The next thing is that we really want to support our gut health. Dr. Lara Bryden emphasized that gut health directly impacts hormone balance. We want to focus on diverse plant foods for prebiotic fiber, so aiming for about 30 different plant foods weekly. It sounds like a lot, but you have at least, let's say, if you eat 3 times per day, you have 21 meals. Does that make sense? Does it add up? Yes, I think so. My math is not the best. And so if you have like one or two um, plant foods in each of these, then you should get to over 30. If you're currently at like 5, don't worry. Just try to increase it to like 7 or 10. Dr. Lara Bryden also recommended to include fermented foods like yogurt, kefir, and sauerkraut to really make sure we're also focusing on adequate hydration, to limit artificial sweeteners if possible, and processed foods overall, to identify and address food sensitivities, to support digestive enzymes and stomach acid if needed, and to just really make sure you're personalizing everything according to your needs. The gut microbiome influences estrogen metabolism through what's called the estrobolome. So it's a collection of bacteria that metabolize estrogen, and supporting a healthy gut microbiome can help optimize estrogen balance during perimenopause. Next point would be to consider targeted anti-inflammatory approaches. So for women with significant inflammation, even more targeted approaches might be beneficial. For example, with anti-inflammatory herbs like turmeric, boswellia, or ginger, to supplement with omega-3. Again, to perhaps start off with an elimination diet like the flush that Jason Theobald mentioned, to use something like red light therapy, to use contrast therapy or sauna, and potentially a little bit of cold exposure. Again, we need to be cautious with that as it's also a stressor. And to use fasting, but if and when appropriate. So again, we want to make sure we're personalizing this. Dane Anderson explained that inflammation at the cellular level can prevent hormones from properly binding to receptors, so essentially creating a state of hormone resistance. Addressing the inflammation can help improve hormone signaling even when hormone levels are declining. I guess on this point, there are a few supplements which might be worth considering. Again, food should always come first. Certain supplements can still be very helpful, especially during perimenopause and menopause. First one being magnesium. Dr. Lara Bryden called magnesium and taurine her dynamic duo for perimenopause. She says that magnesium supports sleep quality, muscle relaxation, mood regulation, energy production, blood sugar balance, bone health, and that we should aim for 300 to 400 milligrams daily, preferably as glycinate, malate, or threonate. And all the different forms have slightly different benefits, but glycinate is excellent for sleep and relaxation, malate kind of for energy, and threonate for brain health. Another supplement we want to consider would be omega-3. This essential fat or fatty acid helps reduce inflammation and supports brain health. We want to aim for 1 to 2 grams daily from fish oil or algae sources. The research does show that omega-3 can help reduce hot flashes and night sweats in some women, while also supporting cardiovascular health, and which is obviously an important consideration as heart disease risk increases after menopause as well. Another supplement to consider would be vitamin D. Vitamin D works closely with magnesium and supports immune function, mood, and bone health. We want to get our levels tested and supplement accordingly, but most experts recommend maintaining vitamin D levels between at least 60 to like 90 nanograms per milliliter for optimal health. And sometimes this might require something like 5,000 IU per day, or maybe even more, really depending on where you live and how much you go outside, obviously. Other things to consider would be specific herbs. So depending on your symptoms, certain herbs may help, like black cohosh for hot flashes. Typically, we would want to take like something like 40 to 80 milligrams daily. Ashwagandha for stress and sleep, something like 500 to 1000 milligrams daily. Rhodiola for energy and mood, maybe like 200 to 400 milligrams daily. Maca for hormone balance and libido, typically something like 1000 to 3000 milligrams daily. Vitex is another one, but I would be cautious with this one. So this is basically chasteberry for better progesterone support in early perimenopause. Jason Theobald mentioned that while herbs can be helpful, they're most effective when used as part of a comprehensive approach that includes nutrition, training, and lifestyle modifications, obviously. We also want to make sure we're targeting, or we're supporting our digestion. Again, for women experiencing digestive changes during perimenopause, we could take something like digestive enzymes with meals. We could take beta 9 HCl if stomach acid is low. We could take L-glutamine for gut lining integrity, something like 10 grams daily, or specific probiotics based on symptoms. I don't recommend just taking probiotics without necessarily knowing what kind does what, and without considering prebiotics as well. We also want to make sure we're targeting nutrients according to specific symptoms. So, for example, the B complex vitamins for energy and stress management, if you're struggling with this throughout the transition. We could focus on foods higher in vitamin E for hot flashes, calcium and vitamin K2 for bone health, CoQ10 for energy and heart health, methylated B vitamins for those with certain gene variations as well. So we always want to consult with a healthcare provider before starting these kind of supplements, especially if you're on medication as well. Quality obviously matters significantly with supplements, so choose reputable brands that undergo third-party testing, super important. Now, the topic of hormone therapy, what you should know. The topic of hormone replacement therapies, also called HRT or menopausal hormone therapy, MHT, is complex and personal. However, the experts I've interviewed have provided some balanced perspectives. Jason Theobald emphasized that hormone therapy can be beneficial for many women, particularly when started during perimenopause rather than years after menopause. He recommends starting with progesterone, which is generally well tolerated, before considering estrogen and testosterone. Dr. Lara Bryden pointed out that the negative process around hormone therapy stemmed largely from the Women's Health Initiative study, which has since been reanalyzed with different conclusions. When started at the appropriate time and with bioidentical hormones, the benefits often outweigh the risks for many women. So here would be some key points to consider. Hormone therapy is mostly beneficial when started within 10 years of menopause. Bioidentical hormones may have fewer side effects than synthetic versions. The delivery method matters a lot. So transdermal estrogen has less risk than oral, for example. Your personal and medical history should guide this decision, and regular monitoring and appropriate dosing are essential. Hormone therapy should not be a one-size-fits-all. It should be personalized to your specific needs and symptoms. Jason Theobald explained that many women experience significant relief from symptoms with just progesterone supplementation, and that can be obtained with even just over the counter in some forms or through prescription. For women who still have symptoms after adding progesterone, low-dose testosterone might be the next consideration, with estrogen added only if necessary. If you're considering hormone therapy, work with a knowledgeable healthcare provider who specializes in women's hormonal health, and can provide personalized guidance. Don't be afraid to seek a second opinion if you feel your concerns aren't being adequately addressed. I also want to talk about mindset and identity. Beyond the physical aspects, perimenopause and menopause represent a significant life transition that can affect your sense of identity. As R.M. Grigorian pointed out, many women struggle not just with the physical changes, but with what these changes mean for them. The transition can be an opportunity to reassess priorities and boundaries, deepen self-knowledge and self-care practices, connect with other women going through the similar experiences, explore new aspects of your identity beyond reproductive capacity, reclaim time and energy that may have previously been directed towards others, develop greater authenticity and self-acceptance, cultivate wisdom and perspective that comes from life experience. So yeah, we just want to remember that throughout history and across cultures, postmenopausal women have often held positions of wisdom and leadership, and this transition, while challenging, can lead to a period of empowerment and clarity. Louise Digby emphasized the importance of community during this transition. Many women feel isolated in their experience, believing they're the only ones struggling. Finding others who understand, whether through in-person groups, online communities, or friendships, can provide validation, support, and practical wisdom. So I want to put it all together for you to have somewhat of a practical approach. Let me share a framework for approaching perimenopause and menopause that synthesizes all these experts' insights. Number one, establish your foundation. Start with these non-negotiables: consistent sleep routine, so aiming for 7 to 9 hours sleep opportunity nightly. Regular meals with adequate protein, so at least sort of 30 grams per meal. Daily movement, 8 to 10,000 steps per day. Basic stress management, something like 5 to 10 minutes of meditation, breathing, whatever you want to call it. Adequate hydration, something like half your body weight of pounds in ounces plus 15. So let me see. If you're about 120 pounds, 60 plus 15 would be 75 minimum ounces per day. And then connection with supportive people. These fundamentals create the foundation upon which everything else should be built. Without them, even the most sophisticated interventions will have limited effectiveness. The next step would be to track your symptoms. Keep a simple journal noting cycle length and changes if you're still menstruating, energy levels throughout the day, sleep quality and any disruptions, mood fluctuations, physical symptoms like hot flashes or joint pain, food intake and how different foods affect you, exercise performance and recovery. This is going to help us identify patterns and triggers specific to your body. Many women find that certain foods, activities, or stressors consistently precede symptom flare-ups. Tracking helps us recognize these connections and make informed adjustments. There are several apps that are designed specifically for tracking perimenopausal symptoms, or you could even just use a notebook. The key is consistency and looking for patterns over time rather than just day-to-day fluctuations. Point number 3, we want to implement changes gradually. So rather than overhauling everything at once, start with one nutritional change, like increasing your protein. Add one form of movement that you enjoy. We want to incorporate one stress management practice, consider one supplement that addresses your primary symptoms, make one change to improve sleep quality. Give each change something like 2 to 4 weeks before adding another. This gradual approach prevents overwhelm and makes it easier to identify which changes are most beneficial for your specific symptoms. Fourth step, cycling your approach. Dane Anderson emphasized the importance of cycling different approaches based on how you're feeling. So, for example, during high energy periods, you might focus more on strength training and muscle building. During more symptomatic periods, you might want to emphasize rest and anti-inflammatory nutrition and stress management. During transitional periods, we could just focus on rebuilding foundations and gradually increasing activity. So this sort of cyclical approach honors the natural fluctuations of your body rather than forcing a linear progression that may not be appropriate during this transition. And point number 5 would be to seek professional support. You could consider working with a nutrition coach familiar with perimenopausal needs. You could consider working with a healthcare provider that's knowledgeable about hormones, a trainer who's experienced with women in midlife, a therapist who understands this transition, or a community of women going through similar experiences. The right support team can make this transition significantly easier to navigate. Don't hesitate to interview potential providers to ensure that they have the specific knowledge and approach that resonates with you. Point number 6, we want to embrace experimentation. What works for one woman may not work for another. Approach this transition with curiosity and willingness to experiment. Try different types of movement to see what feels best. Experiment with meal timing and composition. Test various stress management techniques, as I mentioned earlier. Be open to adjusting your approach as your body changes. View this as a process of discovery rather than a problem to be solved. Your body is changing, and finding what works now is an ongoing exploration. So in conclusion, perimenopause and menopause represent a significant transition, but with the right information and support, you can not only survive, but thrive during this time. The key is understanding that your body has different needs now and honoring those needs rather than fighting against them. Remember that this transition is natural and universal. Every woman who lives long enough will experience it. The difference lies in how we approach it, the support we gather, and the knowledge we arm ourselves with. I hope this guide has given you practical strategies to implement and a deeper understanding of what's happening in your body. While the journey through perimenopause and menopause isn't always easy, it can be a time of profound growth, self-discovery, and renewed vitality when approached with the right tools and mindset. As Jason Theobald so beautifully puts it, this isn't about getting your old body back. It's about creating the healthiest, strongest version of your current body. This perspective shift from fighting against change to working with your body can transform how you experience this transition. If you found this helpful, please give us a rating and share the episode with someone who might benefit from it as well. Remember, you're not alone in this journey, and with the right approach, the best may truly be yet to come. Thank you so much for listening.